Whenever a person tried to brand themselves to others, they were really trying to convince people their opinion of who they are as a fact. This statement held true even more when applied to politicians. State Rep Kyle Swanson was trying to make his opinion of being part of the silent majority true even with himself being in the vocal minority. People who did not dig deeper into the results of the last statewide elections would easily take Kyle's word that he was part of the silent majority. His party held over 60% of the seats in the House. Looking deeper into the numbers, they would see the other party actually had more votes when looking at the combined votes in all the races for seats in the state House. Rep Kyle wanted to help cement his party's hold on power, so he went on a barnstorming tour to be the guest speaker at fellow party members' campaign event. Kyle called his speech the showstopper, for it was always at the end and nothing his fellow party member could do to top it. His trademark passionate speech was on how his party would defend religious liberties by making sure the newly enacted Religious Freedom Restoration Act does not get overturned. The speech, which he gave over 50 times, sounded fresh and new each event because the political firebrand was as confident as a true believer he was defending freedom. The fact that he was the co-writer and sponsor of the law also helped get the campaign rallies crowds behind him. They bought into his theatrics because they knew true believer. While on his way to give this speech in the 43rd District, Rep Swanson's car broke down on an isolated patch of Interstate 330 South and his faith and convictions would be tested. Frank Bubba Crumo was a good old boy born and raised in Uniondale. If a person looked for Uniondale on a map, they would find it just east of the middle of nowhere. Bubba loved the location for being a good old boy meant he loved to hunt and fish. There were more fishing holes and hunting spots in the woods outside of Uniondale than the perfect lure to catch a catfish. Bubba was the owner of Uniondale Gas. It was the gas station, car repair shop, lunch counter, convenience store, and bait shop of the town. Bubba's business was located at the intersection of 1st and Main, right smack in the center of town. The fishermen only had to walk 2 blocks to the Uniondale River. The multi-purpose store had a little coffee counter where the townsfolk would congregate in the winter to talk about the ongoing in their little sleepy hamlet if they did not go to the lunch counter for a bite to eat while discussing the ongoings of their town. In the summer, the same folks, who wanted to keep up with the ongoings of the town, would use one of the picnic benches outside to hold the same informal town hall. Bubba was sitting with a line in the Uniondale River. He was enjoying just relaxing and being in nature while hoping to get the added bonus of catching supper tonight. Even if he needed to go shopping afterwards, Bubba knew he would not be skunked. Fishing was part of living the high life. Right as Bubba was getting that tingling in his leg, which told him he was about to get a tug on his line, his fishing expedition was abruptly ended when his business cell phone rang. The man who was taking a long lunch had to get back to work. Rep Swanson looked at his phone once again to see the time. It has been only 3 minutes since the last time he looked and a half hour since he called AAA. The impatient man had the same response, of cursing, which he had the other 10 times he looked. Now he was not going to make it the campaign event in the 43rd District on time to mingle with the crowd before the start. If the repair truck did not make it here soon, he would be late to give his speech. Finally, he saw the jet black tow truck driving down the road. As it got closer, he saw what looked like an airbrushed zombie mechanic on the hood. His eyes were not deceiving him. The truck's name was Eddie and the work of art was the mascot of the metal band Iron Maiden. When the truck finally stopped, Bubba stepped out. Rep Swanson was as happy as Bubba was when he saw Maiden with Judas Priest and Motorhead on their British metal tour to see the driver. The 6 feet 2 inches stout man with cut-off sleeves to show off his sleeves of tattoos was the House member's type of person. A patriotic person who proudly said he was from America. How could this man not be with his custom repair truck, his trucker hat and the name Bubba on his work shirt? Bubba looked around to take in the beauty of this section of 330, then moseyed toward the stranded traveler and said, "Howdy, what seems to be the issue?" Rep Swanson was not in the mood for pleasantries, he was in a hurry. Plus, with being in the Real America part of his state, Kyle did not have to worry about securing Bubba's vote. "I blew my back tire, didn't AAA tell you?" Bubba did not like the passive-aggressive tone of the man and said, "Simmer down, friend. They did tell me, But I wanted to make sure they were right and also nothing else was wrong. Sorry about that, but I'm running late now. I'm in a hurry for an important speech I need to give. Bubba never serviced anyone's car who was not in a hurry for something important. They had to get to the store, to work, to that dinner reservation, or to that party. Kyle's need to give a speech did not impede the mechanic from continuing to take his time. It might have been a simple tire changing, something Bubba could do in his sleep, but the man was going to take his time. The cost of him hurrying was too much for his customer to pay. Rep. Swanson could not believe that the man was taking his time. He told Bubba he was in a hurry, so that meant Kyle needed quick service. Rep. Swanson expected this type of service in the big city. Those city folk only cared about themselves. Them being self-centered and always taking their time was exactly why Kyle had no issue with how his state was gerrymandered to ensure that the rural area had a bigger representation in the legislature than its population. Can you speed up? I told you, I was in a hurry. Hold your horses, friend. You cannot afford how much it will cost you for me to hurry up. My AAA is paying for this. I know that. I am talking about if I do this wrong and the tire goes flying off while you are driving down the road to give that important speech. Your safety is more important than you giving that speech. Like my papa said, safety is no accident. Hearing why Bubba was taking changed Kyle's mind on Bubba taking his time changing the tire. The rep wanted to explain why he was acting like a city folk and being in a hurry. Those city folk being self-centered so never take the time to do anything right, and that is why Kyle had no issue with how his state was gerrymandered to ensure that the rural area had a bigger representation in the legislature than its population. Sorry, I was not thinking. It is important because I am the keynote speaker at Mark Jackson's campaign rally. We have a chance to gain another seat in the state house. Bubba hearing about politics made him go from first gear to a complete stop. It caused him to recognize the man he was helping. It was that bigot who took away his and his husband's rights away. The law this man championed added so much time to the newlyweds' wedding planning. If that was not bad enough, that man called Bubba's sweet boy a want-to-be woman. Bubba's husband, Stanley, was a crossdresser. A man all dolled up in a dress made Bubba like the Patsy Cline song, Crazy. He found men sexy all the time, but a man in high heels and a short skirt really got Bubba's heart pumping. There was just something to hearing his man giggle or when Stanley would say his name was Mandy. Oh, when a man took on a woman named Persona just made Bubba feel like they really wanted to be with a good old boy like himself. To Bubba, one of the bonuses of living in Uniondale was that there were few shops, became a hindrance while planning the wedding. Bubba and his groom had to travel to other small towns in the area to try to find business to cater their wedding. In their search for vendors, the future Mr. and Mr. Kruma found out that some people did not abide by the state motto of Et vivere, reservate, live and let live. They actually had to travel an hour to Rockville, the biggest city in the state, for the florist, limo, and photographer. 2 of those 3 carters having to travel so far added to the cost of the wedding. In a serious tone, Bubba rhetorically asked, "You are that Swanson?" Rep. Swanson swelled with pride. He loved when people recognized him. That was when people started to give him the respect he deserved then. Also, if those were providing him a service, they did it better. With Bubba being some of his people, the man decided to also talk why he was in a hurry, the speech. It would make Bubba's day knowing he helped the state rep be able to deliver the speech defending liberty. Yes, I am Bubba. I am on my way to give a speech about why we need to make sure Keith Jackson is elected. He will help us make sure that the Religious Freedom Restoration Act does not get overturned during the next session. You hurrying up can make it so the freedom-loving people of our state have their religious liberties protected. It is just not right to make someone who owns a business to be part of something which is against their moral beliefs. Bubba spat on the ground in disgust. How can anyone really think that providing a service to an event makes one part of it? That would be like saying that the waitress had dinner with you for they brought the food and drinks to your table or the usher at the stadium was part of the game. The good old boy knew Rep Swanson was just trying to redefine discrimination as freedom. Treating people as unequals was a sin, and Bubba's eye, the man, who was discriminated on the grounds of religion, thought if this guy liked the idea of people being able to deny service to others, maybe it was time that he was on the receiving end of it. It might make Kyle see the error of his way. If not, Bubba knew it would feel good that Rep Swanson's law backfired on him. Bubba grabbed one of the nuts off the ground and started to put it back on the tire. Kyle asked him what he was doing. Rep Swanson, I am putting your tire back on. You are going to give a speech which promotes discrimination, and that is against my religious beliefs. I have a moral objection to your action and cannot in good conscience change your tire. Luckily, I live in a state where the law protects me from being forced to provide a good or service which is part of a sinful act. If you have an issue with it, I suggest you bring it up to the people who voted to make sure my religious liberties are protected. Kyle Swanson could not believe that Bubba was trying to use being against his law as justification to not change his tire. Changing his tire was not making the mechanic part of giving the speech. It should not matter to Bubba where Kyle was going after he fixed the flat, because all that was happening was a business transaction. If Bubba cannot deal with people who had different views as him, then he should not own a business. The irony of Rep Swanson using all the arguments he scoffed at when the opponents of his bill said them was lost on the defender of religious liberties. Rep Swanson was a huge supporter of the law because he never thought it would be used against him. Not being able to empathize with the people the law was used against made Kyle never see how it really infringed on other people's right to be treated equally by others. How it made a group of people have less freedom because they were denied a service offered to the public for a purely arbitrary reason. True freedom was when everyone was treated equally in the same situation, and his law infringed on it. His law made it so people who were denying the service made other people know their beliefs were the dominant one. To Kyle, Bubba was not using the law how he intended it. The law was only to stop people from being involved with sinful acts, and making sure people stayed true to God's word was never a sin. It never occurred to the pious man one man's prayer was another man's sin. Kyle knew Bubba had no right to deny him service. The law was written broadly to pass, not for all to use. It had to protect any and all religious beliefs, but Kyle only thought about defending his own when championing the law. He never thought that everyday business owners did transactions which went against their personal beliefs. Orthodox Jewish tailors sold garment with mixed thread counts, Catholic bar owners served meat dishes on Friday during Lent, and Mormon restaurant owners sold alcohol. The self-proclaimed saint never dreamt that anyone would see his actions as sinful. Kyle thought that people who were for same-sex marriage would disagree with his views on it. Even right now, then someone accused him of committing an affront to God. Kyle believed the accusation as much as a parent believed that the weed they found belonged to their child's friend. You can't do that. Me giving a speech is not a sin. Trust me, I can. I know that law you passed by how often it was used on me, and I am well within my rights. By changing that tire, I am helping you by providing you transport to make the speech. I find giving a speech promoting discrimination sinful. This is just like that limo service was not part of my wedding, but only transportation for the day. It was allowed to deny service for the owner found my marriage a sin. I will call AAA and tell them it is against my religious beliefs to help you go to that rally. Being frustrated that he was not being treated as he wanted to be, Kyle said, "All I want to do is give a speech. You were involved in a religious ceremony." Kyle, trying to justify why he should be treated better than Bubba, made the tow truck driver turn around. Subconsciously, he needed to set the situation straight. My wedding was not a religious ceremony. It was done by the justice of the peace. The relationship between me and my sweet, sweet boy did not change that day by being blessed by God. We just declared, in public, to our friends and family how strong our love and bond was. I will say to you what the people who denied me the service which they offered to the public said. I see what you are doing as a sin, and I do not want to be associated with a sin. Treating others less than how you want to be treated is a sin to me. Before you say I am just doing the same as you, no. I am not. There is nothing wrong with being intolerant of discrimination and not wanting to be part of it. There is something wrong with being intolerant of two people in love for you do not approve of who they love. Now just sit here and reap what you sowed. As Bubba's tow truck became a black dot on the horizon, Kyle did not think of anything which Bubba said to him. His mind went to how could a heathen try to use the Bible against Kyle doing the right thing. By the time that black dot disappeared, the religious man found comfort in Jesus' word about how the world hated him also. Then, after assuring himself he was on the moral high ground, all the closed-minded man could think of was he was mistreated. Kyle was thinking it was not right for others to push their personal belief on who they were conducting day-to-day commerce with. Marriage was different, it was sacred. Kyle never even thought for a moment that equality for all could be sacred. He never thought that love between two people could be sacred. He never thought that Jesus said to treat others how you wanted to be treated. Matthew 7 was not well known to Kyle. Kyle was still looking towards where the black dot disappeared into the horizon when a black dot on the other side of the road started to come towards him. It was Bubba, and he was coming back to do the right thing. On his way returning to his little fishing excursion, all the good old boy could think of was even if denying service to that bigot was his legal right, it was not morally right. He could not leave anyone stranded, his papa raised him better. His ma did also instill in Bubba to do what was right, not what others were doing. Bubba pulled up to Rep Swanson and said, "Get in the truck, I will tow you to your speech. I will change the tire while you give it." Kyle was so happy that Bubba remembered his roots of being from the real America. That even if he disagreed with someone's religious stance, it was wrong to discriminate against them. He was proud that the good old boy did not let the coastal elite influence him in being against what America really stood for. Again, the irony of him not thinking of others' religious beliefs was lost on Rep Swanson. "I am so happy that you saw wrong." Those words rubbed Bubba the wrong way, but the good old boy was not going to be deterred from doing the right thing by the unethical person acting like he was morally right. Bubba could still hear all the words of wisdom from his papa and ma. Those words reminded him of some more sagely advice he got from both of them: always set the record straight. "Yes, I saw it was wrong for me to act like you. Now shut up about it and get in the truck." As Bubba was getting Kyle's BMW hitched to Eddie, the passenger was feeling smug. The smugness went away when he saw the picture on Bubba's sun visor. It was of one of Bubba and his sweet, sweet boy. Anyone with any compassion could see that those two deeply care for each other and their love for each other was strong. Kyle knew from the picture the bond between those two was as pure as the Virgin Mary. Kyle flipped the sun visor up and took his thoughts as the devil's work. It was him being weak and succumbing to the pressures of the physical world. He had to be mistaking love for lust, caring for needing, and be wrong about the pureness of the bond. Kyle, reassuring himself, along with the picture being out of sight, helped him gain the strength to fight off the weakness of giving into seeing a sin as righteous. Bubba got into the truck and took off down the road. The man who was making sure that Kyle would be on time for the speech unconsciously flipped down the sun visor. He loved having that picture in his sight when working. It reminded him why he worked so hard. Rep Swanson became quiet when the picture was in view again. This was for he did not want to ask the questions on his mind. He wanted to know more about Bubba's relationship. How those two met, how long they'd been together, and if they were planning to adopt. Kyle's driver was close to the same as the rep was when he became a father for the first time. The passenger knew that Bubba would be a good father because of how strong the driver's moral convictions were. This was the first time in his life that Kyle was seeing a homosexual couple as people. He never had any real interactions with someone in a same-sex relationship. All the other time he dealt with gay couples was them protesting his bill. It was not Kyle talking or listening to them, only talking at his opposition. It was easy for Kyle to see homosexuality as a sin if he did not see how real their love were. Even with not talking about what was on his mind, Kyle's eyes kept on opening up to see the truth. This was for Bubba called his husband to tell him he would be late for supper. It was shocking to the rep how much it was just like a conversation he would have with his wife. Kyle was starting to see homosexuals as humans. He now had face of a person he interacted with. He saw when he thought about same-sex marriage. It was easy for him to be for denying services to others when he did not realize that those others were just like him. Kyle was starting to understand that people were not defined by who they loved but how they loved their fellow man. Rep Swanson arrived at the gymnasium where the rally was being held. He thanked Bubba for the extra step to get him there on time for the speech and gave Bubba his card. He told the man who saved the speech to email him his address, for Rep Swanson wanted to send a thank you card. Going into the rally, Rep Swanson had a strange thought. That Bubba was a good man, for he did not try to force his religious beliefs on others. He tried to play it off again as the devil's work, but could not. His newly found doubts about the Religious Freedom Restoration Act affected his speech. It sounded like a normal stump speech, one which someone who was just trying to get votes has given over 50 times. Kyle's words had as much passion in them as a couple in a loveless marriage. Kyle had to actually look at his notes while giving it. He kept on seeing that picture of Bubba and his sweet, sweet boy. It touched his heart how happy those two were together. After giving the speech and talking with the constituents of the 43rd, Kyle Swanson knew he had a moral conundrum on his hand. He had to decide to believe in what he knew was right or what he saw was right.